Hello everyone. In this module, we are going to talk about the Constitution of Britain. Before we start with the Constitution of Britain, you might have a question whether Britain has a constitution or not. They might not have any written constitution, but that does not mean that Britain do not have a constitution. I am Ranjit Kaur, Assistant Professor Political Science from the Department of Humanities at the Bhopal School of Social Sciences. Thinkers like Thomas Paine and Alexis de Tocqueville believe that England has no constitution. Thomas Paine further says, where a constitution cannot be produced in a visible form, there is none. But Burke do not believe in this. He says that there is a constitution. As a student of political science, we could say both these thinkers are incorrect. To run a particular country, there is a need of specific principles, well-defined rules, as well as a systematic structure. So, whether the constitution is written or not written, it hardly matters. As far as the England is concerned, their constitution is evolving. They have grown through histories. They have historical growth. So I could say that Britain has a constitution, but mostly their constitution and the provisions are unwritten. So what contributes to the sources of British constitution? So that's the main topic for today, sources of British constitution. Britain has acquired their sources from convention, from charters, from judicial decisions, statutes, eminent work and common laws. These are the major sources of British constitution. Let us talk about them in detail. Let us talk about first source of British constitution, that are conventions. What are conventions? Conventions are practices which we do it repeatedly from number of years, and Britain has so many practices which they are following it from age long. Like for example, the Queen or the King must accept the advice of the cabinet. England has an absolute monarchy, but slowly and steadily, the absolute monarchy got shifted into constitutional monarchy. So, the powers of the King got transferred to the cabinet. Now, whenever King takes a decision, he has to take the advice of the cabinet. Without the advice of the cabinet, none of the decision could be considered as final. Second convention is no taxes could be levied without the sanction of the parliament. After when they established parliamentary form of government, we know parliament is considered to be as the controller of public purse. And that is why no single money could be drawn from the parliament or the money could be collected from the common people without the permission of parliament, since they are the representatives of the people. The third convention talks about the leader of the majority party of the House of Commons must be appointed as the Prime Minister. Though we know that the leader of the majority party, the party which comes in majority in the lower house, is being appointed as the Prime Minister, but ceremonially, Queens appoint a Prime Minister. In India, we also used to follow the same convention, but after 2004, there was a change in the convention. You can explore it by yourself. Next convention talks about that the parliament must meet at least once a year. Though there are a lot of sessions in a year, there could be 1, 2 or 3 sessions, but minimum once a year. Second talks about parliament should consist of 2 chambers. When we'll deal with parliament, I'll let you know how they used to meet as a whole house, then divided into 3 groups. But finally, they have 2 chambers, the upper one which is known as House of Lords and the lower one is House of Commons. Once a speaker, always a speaker. Once a person is being elected or appointed as a speaker of the lower house, he becomes neutral. He breaks off his party affiliation, and that's the reason where that person is not being changed in England. Even when the next political party comes to power, they prefer the same person to be as a speaker. That is why it has been said, once a speaker, always a speaker. Fourthly, the cabinet is collectively responsible to parliament. In parliamentary form of government, the parliament is supreme, and in England we know that the parliament is sovereign, and so the cabinet has to, which is a form of executive, they are responsible to the legislature. So Parliament has power to ask questions from the cabinet and they are responsible to give answers, and that is why cabinet is responsible to the Parliament. Let us talk about the second source of British Constitution, that are charters. Now, what are these charters? These are the important decisions which were being taken time to time, like for example, Magna Carta of 1215. Magna Carta of 1215 talks about that no taxes will be imposed without the permission of Great Council. Till that time, the Parliament was not formed, and the Great Council, which was also known as Magnum Concilium, during the period of Normans, they have made this Great Council, and the members of the Great Councils were the wealthy people as well as the leaders of the church. So they were the taxpayers too. So they decided that no taxes should be imposed without the permission of the Great Council. Second one was Petition of Rights, which came into being in 1628. That further talks about no person should be compelled to pay loans, taxes, or gift without the permission of the Parliament. Now, you could say that the Parliament has taken its shape till 1628. Bill of Rights, which came into being on 1689. Now, what happened in 1688? A major event in Britain, that was Glorious Revolution, where the powers got shifted to Parliament or to the common people and king became nominal. And that is why in 1689, Bill of Rights was being introduced, which has given two things. One is supremacy of the Parliament, and the second one is list of rights to the people or to the citizens of Britain. Act of Settlement, 1701. Act of Settlement talks about who can take the throne. So practically the aim of Act of Settlement was that even the Protestant can become a queen or a king. So that was who's going to hire. 1707 Act of Union of States with Scotland. Here the Scotland got merged with the England. So you could say two kingdoms, England and Scotland, got united, and then they formed one single government, one single parliament. Even it is 1706 and 1707 where the union with England and the union with Scotland. Third major source of British Constitution are its statutes. Now, what are statutes? Statutes are those laws which are being passed by the Parliament. There are many laws which are being passed by the Parliament, but some of them are of high importance, like Reform of 1832, which provides manhood suffrage to the urban middle class. That means before that, every citizen was not allowed to give vote, and nor even the women were allowed to give vote. Only those who have property were being allowed to vote. Second one is Parliament Act of 1911. In this act, the powers from House of Lords were being shifted to House of Commons. House of Lords, which was the upper chamber, which is still an upper chamber of Britain, they were more powerful since Britain used to follow aristocratic form of government. This particular act has curtailed down the powers of House of Lords, and the powers were being transferred to House of Commons. And also, the term of House of Commons was reduced from 7 years to 5 years under this act. Next one is the Representation of People Act 1918. Under this act, every citizen above the age of 21 was being given right to vote. So that was the major reform where men, women all got suffrage, and even above age 21, remember this, 21 years of age, they had the right to vote. Statute of Westminster Act 1931. Under this act, the dominant areas, countries were made liberal, like for example of Canada, New Zealand, South Africa and Australia. Next one is Indian Independent Act of 1947. We know what happened in 1947. India was made free, and also division of Pakistan as an independent state. Last one is Act of 1969. Act of 1969 further lowered the voting age from 21 to 18 years of age. The other source of British Constitution is the judicial decisions. There are a lot of decisions which are taken by judiciary, their judgments. They are also considered to be interpreter of customs, traditions, and all the common laws which are there in the country. So that is why all the decisions which are being made by the eminent jurist are also being considered as common laws. As Dicey says, the British Constitution is the judge-made constitution. Okay, so that means judicial decisions plays very important role in Britain. There are certain cases like, for example, Bruchel's case of 1670, which has given independence to the judiciary, and also the Howell's case, which talks about vindication of privileges of judiciary. The next source of British Constitution is the eminent works. There are certain scholars, researchers who have contributed to the British Constitution by their writings, like for example, May's Parliamentary Practice, Dicey's Law and Constitution, Blackstone's Commentaries on English Constitution. All these works have also contributed to the Constitution of Britain. The last source of British Constitution is the common law. As I already said, the Constitution of Britain is evolutionary by nature. So there are so many laws which were being made time to time. So the assemblage of all those principles, customs, usages, conventions all together has formed a historical growth. Altogether has formed an historical growth, and that has also contributed to the law of Britain. So these are some of the sources of British Constitution through which you could say that Britain has a constitution, some written and some unwritten. That's all for today. In the next module, we'll deal with the features of British Constitution. Thank you.